Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Duggan, and I am here with Justin Davis, and we're checking out Pillars of Eternity.
We are new, sort of old school, relatively hardcore RPG from Obsidian, spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate and the other Infinity Engine games. I did hit new game, right? I was only half.
You did,
attention.
yes.
Okay.
And you did normal. There's a couple different modes you can select from, like a kind of an Iron Man character dies, you can't resurrect them kind of thing.
Yeah, easy, normal, hard. The only thing that's really, I mean, there's lots of things notable about them, but the most especially notable thing about that is that they don't just scale enemy stats, which is kind of the lazy way of doing it. But it's like easy might have like one wolf, and normal might have two wolves, whereas hard might have like a wolf and a dire wolf. So they actually change.
Oh wow! So it's like situationally different.
Yeah, they change the enemy compositions. And we're really trying to show off character creation today. Mm-hmm. So I never in a million years would I skip this story.
Right. It's fantastically written. The voice acting is great, and frankly, even though all of the art style is very interesting because there are 3D models, but the entire thing is overlaid on this kind of like 2D isometric drawing, I suppose.
Yeah, again, if you're familiar with Baldur's Gate or these other games, very much a throwback to that gorgeous sort of high-res, beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds. And they managed the pre-renderedness doesn't make them feel super static because they still have little tricks like real-time lighting and stuff like that baked in. But really, we're here to show off the character creator.
For sure. And
goodness gracious, James, could you spend some time
I did spend some time in this character creator. The backstory of each and every option up there, like race, class, attributes, culture, appearance, voice, not so much voice, but everything else, it is super in-depth.
One of the things that I like most about this actually is they give you these little mouse overs.
I was just about to point to that. Okay. They're so fantastic. And even when it's not necessarily
Should we
the
be
context.
A man or woman? Sorry.
The what?
Man or woman?
Oh, your choice.
Let's be a lady.
All right.
Okay, so even if you don't know... Sorry, you were saying.
Oh, yeah. So even if the context of what it is saying, so for instance, let's say they just use might in a sentence like, the great warrior had a fantastic amount of might, it'll still highlight might, and you can see what might means in the game world and this is a very old school kind of D&D, so it has a lot of mechanics going on in the background, and it's a really nice way to kind of bring characters into not just the world in a narrative sense, but also in a kind of mechanic sense.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Sort of the races are, they get some stat bonuses, but really they're not so strong that you can't be like, if you want to be, an aggressive elf, you can be. Although that, for min-maxers that would drive them crazy. It's not completely optimal. The races are a combination of like fantasy archetypes like elves, dwarves, but then you do have some that are very unique and very special to Pillars of Eternity. You have the godlike. You have the.
Go ahead and pronounce that.
Aumaua.
Aumaua. I was sitting there for maybe 5 minutes just racking my brain trying to figure out how to pronounce that, and I'm still not sure we're doing it correctly. But
they're humanoid-esque, but kind of river folk, ocean folk.
Right.
Let's be one of the godlike just because they're the most special, and I think if I actually remember right, you actually get to choose.
Yeah, there's
which
like death,
type.
fire, life. There's a whole bunch of ones, and they're very interesting.
So, and that's actually, this is going to extend to the classes when we get there in a second, but Pillars of Eternity really is a combination of traditional fantasy archetypes and then, special things that really do feel genuinely new and fresh. These are not just changing, if you pick a moon, godlike, fire, death, it's changing more than just their like lore or, where they fit into this game world. They actually do change their...
They have passives.
Yeah, they get different passives. So
that being said, the lore for these guys in particular is fantastic. Like the moon godlike or the nature godlike, when one is born into a culture, they're kind of revered. They feel like it's lucky. But most death godlike are killed at birth because it's an omen of bad times, basically, which is really cool.
And the game's dialogue, and I don't know how much of that we're going to get to show off here, but you should know if you are creating your character that all these choices, man, woman, race, class, even your culture, your background, they'll have custom dialogue options in conversations with people. They'll react to you differently if you're a noble or if you're a slave or what have you.
I actually didn't know that. That's amazing. And I can only imagine the amount of like that. The resource load for that is just an exponential effect for every single variable you can choose.
Yeah, I mean, it's not across the board. It's not like all 8 classes will have 8 unique dialogues in a conversation. It'll be like, if you happen to be a fighter in this situation, like you might have something special or unique you can do. Again, the character classes are a combination of, everyone sort of has an understanding of what a rogue does. Or although even here it's a little bit different. Ranger, paladin, fighter. But there's totally super unique and special ones like Cypher. We're seeing a lot of godlike ciphers if people are trying to do something new and special. Seeing a lot of those around the internet today.
Which class did you choose on your first character?
So I rolled a character, and I'm about 8 hours into the game. And I originally rolled a druid, who I do enjoy my druid, but I'm actually thinking about starting over. Just because the druid is a little bit more, I guess I don't know why I'm surprised, but it's a little bit more melee focused than I was expecting.
Really? That's interesting.
So I'm thinking about actually re-rolling as a rogue. So the rogues in this game are they're a little bit less defined by, although they are still stealthy. Obviously, a rogue in any video game is going to be stealthy, but they're kind of more like almost like dirty fighters.
Yeah, they're like very CC orientated.
Yeah, like vicious and brutality.
Totally,
like
right.
These are words to describe the rogues in this game.
Kind of like a scoundrel, or just they get a bonus. I think their passive is like when somebody is either has a movement speed or has been like hobbled or hamstrung in some way, they get a bonus to attacking them, and all of their attacks do that, so it's a very good synergy. The one class I did want to point out that just completely blew my mind was actually the Chanter.
Yeah, the Chanters are really
which is so cool, and basically the idea is that they're reciting kind of these ancient hymns almost, and if you actually hit next, each the moves you choose are sentences, and so you have to say a couple of these sentences and build up kind of your argument, so to speak, and then you were able to cash it in with some super sweet effect, like.
And so you choose. I'm choosing 2 of these, and so it's like you're almost like building a song
right
on the fly. Their closest analog is probably a bard in other games because they're kind of a buffing debuffing class, but that's not really. They're wholly unique. Like I've never seen or played anything exactly like a Chanter. They're also confusing. Look, if you're getting Pillars of Eternity, feel free to roll whatever class you want. But in my opinion, I wouldn't consider a Chanter like an especially beginner-friendly class.
Yeah. I ended up actually going with a paladin who just lights his sword on fire and hits people in the face. Totally fine. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Ciphers are also kind of unique. I don't know. Actually, even though I think I might not roll a druid in my final Pillars of Eternity game, I think for the purpose of this Let's Play.
Sure.
Just because a druid, I want to show off something specific.
Sure, go for it.
A druid gets to change what form they shapeshift into. And here's... James, actually tell me if this is stupid or not. I picked cat. Because I thought I would shapeshift into, like a puma or something.
Yeah, but it's almost like a big cat, right?
But he's not. He's on 2 legs, and it's almost like werewolf.
Oh, that's super weird. So
and
it's
I was
kind of like a man cat?
Yeah, the first time I transformed, I was like, what? And so, I don't know.
I wonder if it's the same with like boar and bear if you turn into a man bear pig if you choose boar.
I've seen, bear is a proper bear.
Oh, that's very interesting. Boar. There must be lore to support it. Seems like there's.
And I like that shapeshift because it's not tied to mana or MP, or there is no MP, but basically you can do it once per fight.
Right.
Once per battle. So at the start of each battle, you can just turn into your bear form or boar form.
And that's a very common thread across basically all classes, even stuff like the wizard who reads from a book and only has a certain amount of charges every time they rest. Eventually, if they learn the spell well enough, they can use 1 per fight, basically.
Interesting. And they actually do have, they have skills that do reset on rust as well. Look at how many spells you have to choose from. So it's like, not only can you, it's like, oh, I want to be a wizard, but someone else can be a wizard and have none of the spells that you have.
They can have a totally different grimory, and you yourself can have multiple ones, like 1 for healing, 1 for kind of combat, 1 for encounters, perhaps. Like,
so a lot of the spells are unique, but some of them are also, it's like they don't call it, magic missiles or arcane missiles, but, Middletta's minor missiles. It's just a little bit more flavor. Like even if you've never played this game, you have some understanding if you've ever played D&D or another role-playing game, or Slickin' is sort of like an oil slick. So it's this combination of, just like everything else in the game, of like sort of things that you understand and recognize and things that are new.
And I love how well they spell out the effect. So down there, it's a mathematical formula. Which a lot of games kind of shy away from because it's like, oh, we don't really want to throw math in their face. But it's for min-maxers or anybody who's kind of an RPG guy, like this is fantastic because you know exactly what it's doing.
Well, and you have the choice of like how deep you want to get into it. Like, if you are obsessed with, okay, what's their chance to save versus the spell or stuff like that, like, you can get into that, or you don't need to get into any of that if you don't want to. I don't know. Should we just move forward with this wizard?
Sure, totally.
Right on. So, one of the more controversial things about Pillars of Eternity, and look, this game's getting fantastic reviews across the board from IGN and from virtually everywhere else, but people are kind of mixed on the stat system. Because they abstracted things to such a point where, might isn't just physical strength. I mean, it says so right here. It represents a character's physical and spiritual strength, brute force, as well as their ability to channel powerful magic. So it's like, the reason they did this is because they didn't want anyone that was, new to RPGs or just playing around to ever be screwed. Mm-hmm. So every single stat is useful to every single class. That's the upside.
Uh-huh.
But the downside is that it's abstracted things to such a point where, like, okay, so what does a really high might wizard look like? Are they muscly, or like how do you wrap your head
right?
around
Is it their mental fortitude that's mighty, or? Yeah, and it is certainly a separation from kind of conventional. Okay, I'm a warrior. I'm going to pour everything into might. I'm a wizard. I need intellect as my primary thing. So
this is also important because they affect things. So intellect specifically, actually, intellect is a great example, because what intellect does, among other things, is you can see as I put points into intellect, it ups the size of area effect. So if you have an attack that hits people in a cone or hits people in a circle, dumping more points into intellect makes that circle bigger, so you can hit more enemies. Effects will last longer. You're seeing as I'm dumping points into intellect right now, it upped that duration, 45% down to, 10% if I don't have any intellect. But the interesting thing, or the thing that's confusing or controversial about this, is like that's really useful to like barbarians too. If you're a barbarian that's trying to, bleed somebody or do an effect that lasts a certain duration, you might, there's a super valid, plausible reason why you might want to be a high-end barbarian to make those effects last
longer. If you're a little
longer.
Barbarian kid, stay in school because it'll pay off.
Super true. So, again, I kind of am of two minds. I think that ultimately this was a smart stat system. Don't let someone make their game, make their character, and then 12 hours into it, they're just hosed. Like, right. Oops, I picked all the wrong stats, and I really screwed up, and now I got to start over. So I think they did the right thing, but I also understand the perception from people.
Do you know if there's an ability to kind of respec in this game? And I haven't certainly gotten far enough. I spent maybe 2 or 3 hours reading through all of the character creation, and then got to the end of the tutorial, and then I was like, well, bedtime.
Yeah, as far as I know, you can't respec. What you can do is make party members from scratch at the inn. So let's say we made this moon godlike wizard, and then we're like, well, we didn't do her right at all, but I don't want to start the game over. You could just make 5 companions, 5 party members, and meticulously pick all their stats. Right. So you can hire adventurers from the inn, and when you hire them from the inn, they're like a generic adventurers, and you can customize, they could shore up your weaknesses, maybe.
Totally. And this game has replay potential in different modes, so maybe you kind of learn what stat allocation might be best for the build you're going for, and you're able to kind of have a better mind for that when you reroll.
Yeah. So we're actually getting into, and I just picked, and again, I'm not paying a huge amount of attention. I just kind of picked some spells.
Sure.
We're really just demonstrating this character builder for you.
And what's great is, as you're showing right there, all of the spells that you choose or passives you have from picking a clan, if you're a paladin or a, something like that, it all just displays under the class, so you can see exactly what you're getting into, which is nice.
Yeah. So we picked female, we picked our race and our class. And now where the game sort of goes above and beyond, or begins to go above and beyond, is you get to pick your culture. And not only does that give you sort of another minor stat boost where, I wanted to put 1 more point into Dex, but I couldn't quite, find the place to get that point. It also changes your look and style, your starting weapon, your starting armor.
Which is appropriate to like that, for instance, which I cannot pronounce, but they're kind of it's kind of a colony of pirates almost, and mercenaries, and that's the chainmail is kind of indicative of that.
It's really interesting, right? So if you're a systems guy, you don't care about role playing, what you would probably pick is whatever gives you the stat boost that you want.
Right.
But it also is sort of really awesome and valuable from a role-playing perspective. Look, I think it sounds more fun if my character is from the woods, or if my character is from the plains, or, if they're from the country that's on top and dominant, or if they're from the underdogs, So whichever type of player you are, there's kind of something for you. And then I actually really liked this, too. getting to pick their background.
Mm-hmm.
And so, James, this is super nerdy of me, but one of the things I'm struggling with is I want my character to be an aristocrat. Just 'cause, I don't know, it seems fun. I want them to be like a noble, but I want them to be a rogue. And I'm like trying to reconcile in my head.
Oh, well, I mean, they were an aristocrat, and then they became disenchanted with the lifestyle and their fellow nobles, so they decided to live the life of a rogue. And they're a renegade who's kind of spit in the face of an enlightened life.
Interesting.
So super RP there, but hey,
yeah.
That is exactly what we're getting into with Pillars of Eternity. If you're playing it like me, I guess.
And so once again, if you're just a systems guy, pick the background that boosts, sort of the passive stats that you want, athletics, lore. And now these are separate than your attribute stats. These are, I almost don't even know what to call them, skills, I guess, like your skill points.
So like for instance, might can give you.
Well, that's different. Again, these are your stats. Like
might. So for instance, might gives you endurance, which is then one of those like smaller skill things. So I believe endurance is like, it's interesting. So lore would be counted under intellect, I believe. So if you put a point into intellect, you get a bonus into lore. I believe that's how it works.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think these skills are like passive
completely independent of that system.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to find one. Here's one that has mechanics, and like mechanics is how that's like this game's version of like thievery. So like unlocking, locked doors or things like that requires the mechanic skill, and anybody can take it. And so they've sort of divorced that, okay, I need to have a rogue to unlock doors or get into locked chests. Instead, you could just dump all your points of mechanics into, a wizard, and they could be your guy in your party that does that. And lore is often used in conversation. So it's like if you have a high lore, the RP sort of answer is that you know more about the world.
As well as using scrolls, I believe, right?
That's true. So there is actually a combat use in there for sure. So let's make her an aristocrat. I don't know. Do you care what she looks like?
Aesthetics? Not really.
No?
I think she's pretty awesome.
She's actually very pretty.
Well, she is a moon goddess, so.
Yeah, we did a good job. It's actually kind of interesting that we picked this godlike because, not that it super matters, but we're not going to have as much of an opportunity to sort of show off, the head and hair and body options.
Or any helmets, because they cannot wear helmets.
That's true. They can't wear helmets.
Their heads are all godlike.
They just don't fit. And actually, this is another reasonable point. There's not a huge number of portraits.
Yeah, so I was a little bit, not miffed, but I question why they did this because there's so many customization options with kind of not just the culture of your character, but the demeanor, and you kind of, as you're building up, you kind of have a picture in your head of what this character looks like. And they're like, well, here's 66, which sounds like a lot, but as scrolling through,
but it's 66 for men and women,
right,
and for all the races,
for all the races,
godlike.
All the different, so
if you rolled like a
dwarf
ours. Godlike or whatever, like you're kind of hosed. Like
totally.
there just aren't portraits that fit every single race and class.
Cool if you could upload your own.
I think you can.
Oh really?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like built into. There's not like an upload button here, but I think there's like a folder you can dump them into in your computer,
awesome.
As long as you know like what the dimensions are. Oops, can I go back? I want to go back. I didn't mean to pick that portrait. Here we go. But like you do have some flexibility. Like I rolled an elf the first time, and like technically these are the only elf portraits. I didn't like any of them, so I went back and picked this chick, who like
can't see her ears, so who knows?
Like this is technically a human portrait, but it's like that she passes as an elf.
Sure. And
so like that's. But if you are a godlike, then you have even fewer options. Like you're kind of stuck with this.
Yeah, that's
even though that's not
the
even
death godlike.
Yeah,
is there even a moon? I guess that's kind of a moon.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. There's the voice.
I like that there's different voices.
For sure. They're not race specific though.
No, but I do think like even though my character isn't a mystic, isn't a caster, like I listened to all these, you can click on these and hear different voice samples, and I think I ended up picking the mystic just because I liked
the way it sounded.
Yeah, her personality.
I've got this.
That's fair enough.
What else do we need to talk about?
I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Yeah,
I believe we did. That's all.
Let's go through the whole thing again. Let's just start over. Yeah, I mean, a huge amount of flexibility in this class. It's kind of overwhelming. Well, it's one of those things where like, if you want to spend 2 hours in here, reading every single element of the lore, which type of elf do you want to be? You can do
which
that.
Have different passives as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's an option that's available to you. Or if you're just like, yo, I know I want to be a melee guy. I know I want to bash things over the head. You know,
I didn't necessarily want to sit there for 2 hours and scroll through all this stuff, but I did just because it was so engaging. And I was like, wow, look at this.
Like the lore starts, like that combination of Pillars of Eternity is all about this combination of, you know, lore and gameplay and how they intermesh with each other, you know, role-playing and gameplay. And that bleeds all the way through, even to the stat screen. You know, it's like perception means something in this world. It's not just a stat to like dump some points into.
Totally.
Super digging the game. By the time you see this, the IGN review will probably be up, but you know, it's not a secret that the game's great. You should definitely go out and buy it.
Yeah, check it out, especially if this is your thing and you're kind of a old Baldur's Gate guy, or just a big D&D guy. It certainly caters to that audience, and it's extremely deep, but extremely engaging. And even if you don't want to get super deep into all the mechanics, you can kind of just breeze through some of the stuff and pick a rough idea of what you want and go for it. Woot! That's a good note to end on. All right, well, I'm James Duggan.
I am Justin Davis.
Thank you for checking out Pillars of Eternity. For all things Pillars of Eternity, including our review, which hopefully is out at this point, keep it right here at IGN.